Hello, everyone. Welcome to Walter Living. Already our second or third webinar in English. My name is Steven van Well. I am the co-founder and CEO of Walter Living. On my right or left side, depending on how the screen is organized. Marije, our product specialist. Marije, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks. Marije is here today mostly to keep track of your questions. If you have any questions, use the comment area in Livestorm. Somewhere at the top of the screen, you can answer your questions, and either Marije or our colleague Ari will keep track of all your questions and feedback. And later on during this session, I'll try to answer most of those questions in real time. If we cannot provide a proper answer, we'll follow up over email. But in almost all cases, we'll try to make you just ever so smarter during your house hunt. My goal of this live session is to demonstrate how I and some of the co-workers here at Walter work toward placing the winning bid. Many of you have been with us for quite some time. Some of you just entered Walter. And I want to make sure that both of you get the most out of this live session by showing you how we calculate the bids, how we look at all the features, graphs, comparable homes within the selection that we made for each individual address. And hopefully, with some of the tips and tricks that we are going to show you today, you can crunch those numbers yourself, know what to pay attention to, why we believe looking at indexed prices is important. And at the end of the day, how do you make the perfect combination between placing the right number in your bid letter, but also take a look at some of the conditions and terms that come with your offer letter. So I will share my screen in a few seconds. Feel free to ask questions in the meantime. Marije, feel free to interrupt me while we're doing this presentation. And along the way, I hope to make everybody just a slightly bit more like a Walter Pro expert. So let's get started. In a few seconds from now, if all goes well, and this is always the question, you should see what I'm seeing. And this is really where the process at Walter starts on your dashboard, where, as you can see, I'm a very avid user of Walter, so there are like literally hundreds of thousands of houses that we looked at, and personally went from the northern part of the Netherlands all the way to the most southern province, trying to figure out what is the actual number that matches the home valuation. The house hunt at Walter, and your house hunt almost always starts at the same location, which is on Funda. So for today, I want to look at one house in particular, which is the Dick Grijen Street number 13, somewhere in Amsterdam. The first thing that we want to get a grasp of is what is the actual home condition of this apartment. The home valuation of a villa, an apartment, or a regular townhouse is determined by two major factors. One of them are the comparable homes, which are always situated somewhat nearby. And the second one is the home condition. So are we looking at a true fixer-upper, a place that you have to remodel from scratch, put in a new floor, a new kitchen, a new bathroom, pretty much everything? Or are we looking at an almost turnkey apartment, an apartment where we can move in straight away without doing any upgrades? Or are we looking at an apartment that is literally brand new? In this case, you'll be doing that by going to these houses yourself, booking viewings. In our case, we do this based on hundreds of thousands of images. We do this simply by looking at these images, both with a computer and with a simple trained eye. For this apartment, I think we can very rapidly agree that this is an apartment that is in like above average condition. The floor in the living room looks very nice. The kitchen actually looks quite okay. I would say not more than a year or 2 years old, barely used, if I had to guess. And along the way, we can see maybe some little repairs needed in the exterior. Also, if we move through the apartment, Everything looks really, really good. A bathroom that is slightly older than the kitchen and maybe from the last decade or so. So you could do some upgrades here if you want to, but it's definitely not needed to move in. So in general, I would say that this is an apartment that is in good condition, and there is very little needed to upgrade before I want to move in. So with this information, I want to show you the first little trick at Walter, and that is actually copy and pasting the URL from Funda to your Walter dashboard and simply finding the right apartment. No need to type the address, simply copy and paste the Funda link into Walter, and then we'll actually match it with the listings that we have on file. You can always make changes if you believe that either the living area is not correct or maybe the type of apartment is not labeled correctly. To make these changes, simply go through this survey, tell us exactly what type of an apartment this is, how many stories the apartment has, how many rooms the apartment has, and if necessary, make the corrections for the living area or the size of the backyard. The construction year and all these different inputs will determine the type of comparable homes that we will match this listing with, and those will eventually determine the winning bid. So if we confirmed all the information, we start to generate the report, and then let's talk about the fun part. A Walter report, if it's loading, consists out of a few chapters. We have the valuation, we have the comparable homes, we have the bidding behavior, and we have the housing market. One thing that is important to know is that everything that you're seeing in today's demo is instantly available after an upgrade to Walter Premium. If you're using Walter Plus, some of these features will be locked behind the upgrade, like viewing the transaction prices and the bid strategies. For the purpose of the demo, I will show you all the fancy stuff that you will get with Walter Premium. You can always upgrade from your own account if you want to. And if you're on Walter Plus, please make use of all those features to determine the proper bidding amount. Before we dive into the actual numbers, we always ask ourselves one question, and that is the agent playing games? The question can be asked mostly to determine how realistic the list price is. In this case, we have a list price of 485,000 euros, which is slightly above average in the Netherlands. If we look at the list price in the entire market, we can determine if that is reasonable or not. The first chapter is Walter's home valuation. The way that we look at our home valuation is again divided in these 4 different home conditions. From an apartment that needs maintenance, a fixer-upper, to a reasonable condition, where I would say you do want to make repairs within the next decade or so, but it's not necessary to move in right away. The good condition, where I believe this apartment can definitely be in, and even a slightly higher condition, and that is the looks like new condition. Looking at the details of the apartment, I would say that it's very valid to say this house looks like new. Again, this is somewhat of an opinion. There are no hard facts to say every apartment built after 1980 is average. Sometimes houses that are built over 100 years ago will look like new after a renovation. So looking at this apartment, we can already see that the price is determined by home condition. The home condition at itself can be reflected at the bottom of the market, as you follow my cursor, and the top of the market. The difference here, again, is home condition, not so much location. And at the same time, we see our first toggle and our first premium feature. That is the difference between the purchase price and the indexed purchase prices. If we look at the purchase price, we're looking at the actual purchase price that someone paid for the house a month, a year, 7, 8 months ago. In many cases, let me find a nice example here. This home is sold about 8 months ago for a purchase price of 575,000 euros. Since the market, and this is something that you are fully aware of, is on the rise, we can expect that in today's market, this apartment is actually worth a bit more. So from the 575 8 months ago, in today's index purchase price, pardon me, is 595,000 euros. So this apartment increased in value by close to 20,000 euros simply because it aged well. If you look at the entire market, you can see the switch between purchase prices and index prices resulting in a much higher price per square meter. The price per square meter is the metric that we use to determine how much a house is worth. The calculation there is pretty straightforward. So we look at the living area, in this case 86 square meters, times the price per square meter results into the price that you probably have to pay to purchase this house. So we've plotted all these different comparable homes on a graph where you can see two patterns that can be recognized whether you're buying in a big city like Amsterdam or a small village like Vormer. The smaller the size of the living area, the relatively higher the price per square meter. The bigger the living area on the x-axis, the y-axis, the lower the price per square meter. So if we know that as well, we can focus on the area that is highlighted over here. We can focus on apartments that are similar in size, somewhat smaller, or maybe slightly bigger. But we wouldn't focus too much on the homes that are way smaller or way bigger because it's an unrealistic comparison. And we're literally trying to compare apples with apples. In doing so, we can do another thing. We can filter out house types that are not similar. So once again, triple checking, we're looking at an apartment somewhat up on a higher floor. I think this is an apartment on the 3rd floor. Let's triple check. On the 2nd floor. So we want to make sure that we also look at homes that are actually upstairs. So we can filter away some of the houses that are at the ground floor level because those houses in general are worth slightly more due to the garden or due to the easily accessible areas. So if we then filtered out some of the apartments that are not really similar, and we've used these index prices, we can see something that many of you have encountered, and that is that the higher valuations at Walter might be in the lower end of things compared to what's happening in the market. So I want to take just a few minutes to explain why this is happening, what you can do to spot these changes, spot these differences, and in a similar way, why you should be paying attention to what's happening historically. If we look at the market here, we can see that some of the apartments that are on the higher end of things nowadays are worth close to 7,000 euros per square meter. If we look at the interiors of some of these houses, in doing so, click on each of these dots, click on the pictures, and then we'll bring you to Funda. And we can sort of try to see if we agree that some of these apartments are quite similar. Right, because this is the top of the market, we do believe that this house should bear some resemblance with the houses that we'll be exploring today. Nice floor, definitely an older kitchen for this comparable home. Relatively similar outside, similar exteriors. Just scrolling through these pictures briefly. Nice roof terrace, so that's definitely a plus, right? So big comparison here is the interior. We have a roof terrace, which is adding slightly more value. So you can see that it is all the way up there. If we're looking at more houses all the way at the top, we can see some floors at the ground floor, which is not a perfect comparison. So I want to make sure that we actually look at not the ground floor apartments, but the upstairs apartments. Just scrolling through these houses. And we want to determine how much money should we spend for a house that is in a similar condition? I would say that both houses that we've seen here are in an okay condition at the top of the market, but definitely not as nice as the one that we're looking at, right? Just trying to compare, again, apples with apples, kitchens with kitchens, bathrooms with bathrooms. So up until now, I have not seen houses that actually look better than the house that we're trying to explore. In a similar way, I would say that we probably need to place a bit closer to 67, 6,800 euros per square meter, and not closer to 6,200 euros as our initial prediction is projecting. And we can do a similar thing by comparing upstairs apartments with a similar living area and exploring the market behavior. Because the market behavior nowadays is people trying to outbid each other. And the person that bids the highest often secures the winning bid. The list price, again, in this case, is probably there to attract as many people as possible to a viewing. Because if we look at how the bidding behavior occurs for many of the houses that were sold nearby, in almost all cases, we're talking about double-digit overbids. 20%, 10%, 25% above list price. So where the list price definitely is some indication of what the sellers might be expecting, the real world results actually push these prices to much greater heights compared to what these list prices do. Even if we go a little bit down the rabbit hole and try to find apartments that are close to like the 80, 85 square meters, we can see one exception. The only apartment that got sold below the list price at a similar size probably had a very extensive list price. And if we look at the interior, I would say that it is quite similar to the one that we're looking at. I think this is the penthouse suite. So there's a parking spot probably tied to it. So these people had a very high expectations, and the market corrected them ever so slightly from a list price of 525 to a purchase price of 515. Almost all other listings are sold above the list price. And if we would look at the market in its entirety, we can see that over 49% of the comparable homes are sold above the list price. We can use this graph to then see how unique the apartment was that we just saw. In the last 12 months, only 4 houses are sold below the list price. And we can also look at the trend. So we can see what has been happening in this market amongst those comparable homes. A year ago, the average overbid was around 7.1%. In today's market, 8.6%. So if we would place an average bid for this apartment, I would say that adding another 8% on top of that would probably bring you closer to the true market value of this apartment. So we can use these calculations in the back of our minds, or we can look at our bidding strategies. Because at the end of the day, we believe that there is not a fixed number that you should be focusing on. We believe that there are 3 types of offers that you can do. A sharp offer, we like to call play it safe. A more aggressive offer, which should increase your chances of winning, but also could increase the chances of actually paying slightly more than the true market value. We call this play to win. And then there is our go all in strategy, which in many scenarios is linked to the highest overbid. In this case, we're adding another 16%, almost 17% on top of the list price, where we can see in the market, there were actually only a handful of cases that are going that high. So you would expect that based on all the data that we just reviewed, that placing a bid 17% above list price should put you in the winning, should make you a winner. And at the same time, you're probably overpaying by quite a tremendous amount. So the way to look at these strategies is trying to balance the true market value, or play it safe, the probably future appraisal value that will also determine your maximum loan capacity, all the way up to our give it your all, go all in amount, which brings this apartment to 576. With Walter Premium, you get access to these bidding strategies, where with Walter Plus, you'll have to do these calculations on your own based on either the comparable home selections, the Excel sheet that you can download, or simply running the numbers on your own time frame. From here, whether you're using Walter Plus or Walter Premium, you can write your own offer letter. Marije, if we have questions about the Plus report, this might be a good time to dive into a few of those questions. And then the next demo will be mostly focused on drafting the bid letter, the resolutive conditions, and telling people and showing people what we've experienced over the past few months when we are looking at how the conditions will actually increase your winning chances alongside of finding the perfect number.
Yes, and you can also show the city pages and the...
I will do that right away. That might actually be a really good idea. So one of the new things that we've launched recently are the neighborhood pages. Each Walter Plus report or Walter Premium report has this nice little breadcrumb from the city of Amsterdam to the neighborhood, in this case het Oostelijk Havengebied. So in the report, we would actually focus entirely on some of the comparable homes based on the address itself. We can also zoom out, and from a much higher level, we can look at what's happening in the market. So in the market, there was slightly less aggressive overbidding happening here in the last 12 months. This page, by the way, isn't translated in English, so I'll do the live translations here. Focus on the first section where we focus on how much people are either under or overbidding based on the list price. In our report, we're hitting close to that 10% or 8%. If we take a look at the entire market, it's closer to 6%. There's a lot of young people. Over a third of the people are between 25 and 45. And you can explore some of the most recent transactions in our database. You can explore some of the most expensive listings that were sold in the past 12 months. Always fun if you're bored at some point. And you can also look at some of the cheapest houses that went on sale. At the same time, at the bottom of this page, we can look at the growth compared to the rest of the country. So houses in Oostelijk Havengebied increased by 5% over the past 12 months. Which is much lower than the national average of 10%, slightly below the 6% average in Amsterdam. And the average price per square meter is close to 6,000 euros per square meter, which is again way above the average in the Netherlands, but a bit lower than the average prices in Amsterdam. So take a look at some of these pages. In each report, you can link to the neighborhood pages to explore more properties that were sold. And again, this is all about finding the apartments and transactions that have a quite big resemblance with the property that you're looking at, and then using those numbers to almost predict what your competition is doing, who might not have access to all this information. Marije, back to you.
Yes, there are some questions, and one question we get every webinar is about erfpacht. I don't know the translation. Maybe you do.
Ground hold or ground lease. Yes.
Great. So can you tell them more about that?
Well, I can elaborate a bit on how we are not using it. So unfortunately, there is a lot of small fine print rules and timeframes tied to the whole erfpacht, ground hold, ground lease construction. So in general, our automated valuations do not take into account ground lease, simply because there are too many factors involved that are unknown to us to then apply that to our machine learning models. What we do see is that in many cases, to try to figure out the impact of the erfpacht conditions, is looking at comparable homes, looking at the difference between those homes that were sold with the ground lease condition compared to homes that are sold without the ground lease construction. So we did some explorations in major cities. There's a quite big penalty, anywhere between 40 to almost 50,000 euros when you look at an apartment with or without the erfpacht condition. So it's definitely something to take note of, because it actually results in a much lower purchase price on average, but it also will limit your ability to for the mortgage application, because the cost of the ground lease of the erfpacht will be part of your mortgage calculation. So let's say if you were able to secure a mortgage of 500,000 euros without the ground lease, it will absolutely be less if there is a ground lease construction. So if you have questions about an apartment with the ground lease, always feel free to drop a note to our support channels, whether it's on WhatsApp or simply send us a note on support@walterliving.com, and we can see if we can help you out there. If you look at the automated models, explore those comparable homes, explore the descriptions on Funda, and you will see that homes that are on averagely sold way below your expectations are probably houses that have that ground lease erfpacht condition tied to it.
Okay. I think this is a great question. Is the valuation Walter provides aligned with what a bank would value the house, or is it more of a bid advice?
Yeah, excellent question. So what we're trying to do here is, based on these comparable homes, do a suggestion what we believe is a fair market value. The model that you can see that actually predicts the home valuation does not take into account the list price. The model that we have for our Walter Premium customers that results into these bidding strategies does take into account the list price. The list price turns out to be a pretty good predictor what will happen with the eventual purchase price, obviously. So if we look at these three strategies, I can't say with 100% certainty because there are edge cases, but in almost all cases, our play it safe prediction will be matched by an appraisal agent. In today's market, many appraisal agents are willing to even underwrite the play to win numbers because the market is so supercharged and the supply and demand is definitely not in sync. This is pushing up the market, this is pushing up the prices, and the appraisal agent will probably also underwrite the play to win amount. Where it gets a bit blurry is when you place a bid all the way to our go all in numbers. So the most aggressive bid that you can do based on the bidding behavior of your previous competitors. So in this case, we would expect that an appraisal report will end somewhere between the 540 and the 550. If you decide to go all in and add another 20 to 15 to 20,000 euros on top of that, you're taking the risk that the appraisal report will not be this high, which also means that you have to bridge that gap with your own funds. So for this apartment, we would predict that you need to go to 552. If you are going all in, if you're adding another 15,000 euros on top of that, your mortgage application will probably max out at 552. So even though you might have won the bid, you can only secure the financing if you can come up with the 15,000 euros of own funds to bridge that gap. This is also important to when you place the bid. The sellers will look at how realistic it is that the appraisal agent will match your bid. And if that's an unrealistic amount, and again, this is the difference between play to win and go all in, they would require you to bring some of your own funds, your own savings to the deal. Otherwise, they are uncertain and they will favor a lower bid because that will probably be less of a risk in terms of securing the funding. So most of these numbers, again, are geared towards showing you a realistic market valuation based on a ton of data. And if you want to skip the data and focus on the comparable homes yourself, you will hopefully draw those same conclusions, right? So we'll look at the advice that we're giving here as true market value, but at the same time, know that the market is pushing people to greater heights. And at that point, there's quite a realistic chance that your appraisal agent will simply not support going that high.
Great answer. Okay, next question. How up-to-date is the data in Walter Living?
Yeah, excellent question. So there are two types of ways that we collect data. First is the official way. we get transaction data from the official land registry every month, and those are the actual purchase prices. Those purchase prices are always delayed by a few months because the land registry does not get the purchase price until the sellers and the buyers meet at the notary service. And then the notary submits those amounts to the land registry. So an apartment that is sold, let's say, 3 months ago, won't show up in the land registry systems until they actually went to the notary service, which is almost always 6 to 8 weeks after the initial agreement. So there's I would say, 3-month delay in the data. Luckily, we also have a ton of users that are sharing information about homes that they purchased, and they give us the purchase prices that aren't triple checked. So we use a combination of those two to show you either the homes that are sold months ago with the official purchase price, and sometimes if there are more recent sales. So in this case, we're looking at 2021. Let's see if I can find a newer selection here. There we go. In this case, we have a few houses. These are all from last October. These are all the official transaction. If we have newer transactions, and this is anywhere between, I would say, 2 to 3 months ago, we will actually have a tentative purchase price here, which is almost always the right purchase price. And that way we can keep our models up to date. But there is always a delay because the houses that you're seeing are sold a few months ago, and then somebody needs to secure the funding.
There are newer transactions. Ari says Steven doesn't notice he's on page 5.
And that's actually correct. So I will. That's a nice design era, dear designers. So we have transactions here. Thanks, Ari, for being such a smart guy today. Then the transaction is pending. And this means that we have data from, this is close to April. So this is a month and a half ago. And these purchase prices will become final once they actually hit the official systems. Thanks, Ari.
I think it's time to go to the dashboard.
Nice. Let's do it. So a large part of placing a bid is not just figuring out what we believe the valuation is. It's about what you are willing to spend, what you are able to spend, and how to put everything together in a bid letter. The way that you can do this is the following. Whether you hit write your own offer letter or just go to the dashboard, you will end up on this page. And let me switch to English, which is easier during an English webinar. There we go. So we want to collect a bit of information. We want to check a few facts of the property. And I just want to bring you guys through some of these questions that we have. We use some of this information to improve our calculations. And we can use this information within our buying service, Walter All-in-One. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a few minutes. So I haven't viewed this house. The list price is correct. And I would say the overall condition looks like new. From here, we're trying to figure out if we want to replace the bathroom. We're not going to replace the bathroom. We're also not going to replace the kitchen. A little fun fact here. We are reviewing all these images with some fancy AI and machine learning technology. So sometimes you might see a bathroom instead of a kitchen and a kitchen instead of a bathroom. That is the computer still learning. In this case, job well done. And then we can start to actually look at how new or old some of these interior things are. As we move on, if you use our buying service, you can let us know some of the specific details that you encountered, or you can simply skip this step. And obviously, you can tell us how disappointed or curious you are. So in this case, I am just curious. As we move on to the next steps, we are sort of composing our bid letter. So I know what I want to bid for the offer, and I am going for our play it safe amount. I think it was 335. For the sake of the demo, this is what I will offer. I'm going to bring some savings. So in this case, I will bring all my savings. If this works out, 1 second. typing and talking, not my strong suit. 100,000 euros of savings. And the first big condition is letting the sellers know when you want to move in. So sometimes this is within a set period, which could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, or there might be a specific date. In the case there's a specific date, you've probably heard that from the selling agent. The most generic thing that you would do is tell them to move in within 3 months, which should give you ample time to secure the financing and the sellers to actually move on to their new place. The next step would be is how you want to finance the house. A few people have the ability to pay all cash, which is the most favorable way to purchase a house, definitely for the sellers. But obviously, in many cases, we simply need a mortgage. And then we're going to have a look at the resolutive conditions. These are the conditions that we will add to the bid letter, that you will add to your bid letter, to be able to walk away from the deal if something does not work out. So the first question that we want to ask is your bid subject to securing financing? The amount is the calculation of your bid minus your own funds. So in this case, my bid is 535. I'm bringing 100K to the table, which means that my reservation here is lower than the actual bid. This does not indicate that I am going to borrow 435,000 euros. It does indicate that if I want to walk away from the deal, I need to show the sellers proof that 2 financial institutes, mortgage providers, banks, are unwilling to borrow me 435,000 euros. You can also remove the subject to securing financing, which means that you are liable for a 10% penalty if you are unable to secure the financing. Be very careful in not attaching or waiving the subject to securing financing, because you will be held to the 10% penalty if you later on walk away from the deal. So in this case, I am going to use that. If you have cash laying around, you can probably wire that within the next 2 weeks. If you need to work with a mortgage provider to secure your bank guarantee, it will take an equal amount of time it does to actually secure the funding. So this often takes 6 weeks. Many selling agents nowadays push you to use 4 weeks. It is doable within 3 to 4 weeks, but it's only possible if you have done all your homework, if you are already with a financial advisor. So be careful in using really aggressive terms here, because if you are unable to secure the financing, if you are unable to show that you are unable to borrow this amount of cash after those 4 weeks, the deal falls through, and then you have to start from scratch. So I'm often suggesting people to use 6 weeks, use the same amount for the bank guarantee, and if you have the cash on hand, you can expedite the process to 2 weeks, and then we can talk about the building survey. The building survey is often necessary when you believe there could be things terribly wrong with the apartment, or if you simply want to have a triple check. Again, in today's market, with an apartment that looks as nice as this one, you could think about waiving the building inspection. At the same time, I often advise people to do have the option to do an inspection, and at the same time attach a maximum amount of immediate repairs that are accepted. So in this case, we pre-fill it at 1%. You could increase it to 2% of the home value. Then we're talking about a 10% or a 10,000 euro immediate improvements needed, like replacing the windows or replacing the rooftop. If your building, or if your inspection actually results in a higher amount, then you can walk away from the deal. So these are all conditions that will allow you to walk away from the deal. The more conditions that you're adding, the less attractive it is for the sellers to accept your bid. So very much in sync with that amount. We can make an opening offer somewhere next Wednesday, and I have answered all my questions. From there, Very easy thing to do. Move on to the next step and download your bid letter. The bid letter, if your profile is in English. You can switch to a Dutch version if you switch the website to Dutch. And in this case, we've put all the resolutive and contingency clauses in the bid letter. We talked about the delivery, the deed of transfer, 3 months. We have our bid in here. We have our reservation of financing here. We have our bank guarantee and the construction inspection. So all you need to do right now is copy and paste this into an email to the sellers. And then you should be good to go to enter the bidding war. Most important thing to realize, the sellers do not have to accept the highest offer. The sellers are always able and capable of accepting an offer that is lower than your amount if the combination of those conditions and the amount is more favorable to what the sellers are looking for. Be sure to understand that you can place an incredibly high bid that is unrealistic. Many selling agents will advise their customers not to accept the bid because they suspect that it's going to be very hard to secure the financing. So even though the market is like supercharged and people are overbidding more and more, it is important to try to figure out what the real value is of a property before placing your bid, making sure that your bid that you're doing will be underwritten by the appraisal agent. And if there's a gap between the market value and your bid, you should have those funds on hand to bridge the gap. And you should use that information in your bid letter as well to make sure that the selling agents actually trust you and your bid to work out down the line. Because nobody wants to accept a bid that seems unrealistic and unable to bring to the finish line. And that's why this combination of conditions and amount is more important than just focusing on placing the highest bid. This is also how you could work with Walter on your own. And at the same time, there is the option to hire us as your buying agent. Just very quick summary here. We have 2 subscriptions, Walter Plus, which is our monthly subscription, which will give you 25 comparable homes, unlimited property reports, prices per square meter, and these indexed purchase prices. The upgrade to Walter Premium will give you access to everything that you've just seen in the demo, including the automated, more accurate bid strategies, 100 comparable homes if they are available, and you can toggle between the purchase prices and the index purchase prices. And again, you get instant access to those bid strategies. You can also decide to hire us as your buying agent. We can do the negotiations on your behalf. We can place the bid on your behalf. We can help translate documents. Most documents aren't translated in Dutch. We can do a more than decent job in helping you better understand the ownership association documents, the buying agreements, and in doing so, help expedite the process and just add a bit more certainty to these stressful times. And when you hire us with Walter All-in-One, we will contact the sellers or the selling agent directly and act on your behalf. You also get access to our data-driven reports that are checked by a human. So within your Walter environment, you can simply request a strategy, and then some of our co-workers will start running the numbers for you, and we will take the bid strategies as input, look at our expertise, look at what we know of the market of the particular neighborhood, and then advise you what we believe the winning bid should be. And you also get access to our calendar simply by booking a meeting with one of our experts to review the bid that you are working on. And from that point on, you'll join people in Walter All-in-One. You only pay a one-time fee once we are successful. So if we secure the winning bid anywhere between today and the next few months, maybe even years, if we're looking for you, we will send the invoice to the notary only when you win, until we are successful, until you secure the winning bid. There were no costs or fees tied to Walter All-in-One. You can book a Walter All-in-One introduction meeting on our website. Visit the website, Buy with Walter, and start All-in-One. Just follow the steps here, and within no time, you will have a conversation with either myself, Marije, or someone else on the team about how Walter All-in-One could work for you. And until then, we hope that based on the information that you've just seen, you are like almost ready to work in our Walter agent team and crunch the numbers yourself. Marije, do we have a few more questions along the way?
Yes, there are some questions about the 10% deposit. Is it returnable to pay transfer tax and makelaar fee? And is the 10% deposit usually is mortgage finance, isn't it? That's why it's important to add financial.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. What was the second question that was part of all those questions?
Yeah. So that's great because everyone is answering everybody's questions. So
nice.
And there are already some answers in the chat. So it is returnable, and that's why it's important to add some financial clause.
Exactly. So those conditions are, again, they give you an exit if things do not work out. If for some reason you are unable to secure the financing, if the building inspection turns out to be much worse than you expected when you viewed the building. And at the same time, you want to offer security to the sellers. So in, unfortunately, almost all cases that I have encountered in the past week or so, I think we placed more than a few dozen bids myself in the past week or so. The bids that we've lost had two things in common. We bid a little bit too low, but in almost all cases, the conditions were also less or more favorable. So less favorable for us, more favorable for the competitors. People are being pushed to waive that financing clause, which again is quite risky if you do not know with 100% certainty that you will be able to secure the funding. So by increasing your bid by, I would say, 5,000 to 6,000 euros, it could help overcome that hurdle where the sellers would actually accept a higher bid instead of a lower bid that waived those contingencies. As a seller, you probably are okay with getting a few thousand euros less if you are 100% sure that the sellers are able to secure the financing. And if those people are unable, you will pretty much get free money, right? So the average house in the Netherlands is close to 400,000 euros. So if I accept a bid where those contingencies are waived, I'm getting a free 40K, and then I'm just going to put my house on the market again. So that's a very attractive offer to accept. So if there would be one thing that we're seeing that could help you, spend more time on finding a financial advisor, spend more time. And this could be found whether it's like around the corner, whether it's like your own bank. If you spend a bit more time on that, and you can add that information, add a contact person to your bid, it will actually make your bid look way more professional. And it might even help you secure the winning bid if you have a lower amount. So if you have a financial advisor, we do not have a stake in any financial advisor agencies. I cannot point you toward which one you should use. In general, you should find one, because then you can add his or her information, contact information to your bid letter, which is simply stating, hey, you can call first name on this number or reach out on this email, and they are more than happy to answer questions about my situation. There are non-expats and expats on this call, probably. If you are an expat, you are going to run into more questions regarding your financing, and it's going to be slightly harder to secure financing in many of these cases. So try to prepare a bit more on the financing side, because that might give you that little edge of security, offering security to the sellers compared to just offering the highest amount, because the highest amount is not a sort of like silver bullet for like inking the deal. It's that combination of those two.
Great answer. Different question. What is our success rate for Walter agents in purchasing homes in Amsterdam?
Yeah. So I would say it's pretty similar to what we would see with most of our customers. And that is close to about 16% of the bids that we're doing are accepted as the winning bid. So because we see so many people placing bids on multiple houses, we are totally fine with placing bids on 3, 4, 5 houses simultaneously for the same customer, right? So it's more about really getting a good understanding of like how the market behaves, and in some cases how eager you are to win, than to say we have like an 80 or like 90% success rate. In many of these cases, we have over 20 bids on one particular house if we talk to the selling agents. And the general rule of thumb is you will lose 9 out of 10 bids. Definitely you will do that. If you win on the first attempt, you probably hugely overpaid. So we do want to be very comfortable with losing in the first like 1 or 2 attempts. And along the way, we want to figure out, can we actually either increase our advice if it's necessary, because we are seeing the market grow higher and higher. So adding a few extra €1,000 today might help avoid you paying €10,000 more in 6 months from now. But we also want to be very careful in sort of going with the market because everybody else is doing it. So from the first few people, we launched Walter All-in-One last month. So we have about 16% of those people who joined already secured the winning bid today, and a very short time frame. But many of those people were already looking for a house and bidding for quite some time as well. So this is really...
and not only in Amsterdam.
And not only in Amsterdam. So we help people almost everywhere. I think the one state that we have not purchased a home is in Groningen. We're very close to securing the next one in Limburg. I just saw just now. So it's really about accepting that you will lose even if you hire us for a few times until we better understand the dynamics of the neighborhood that you're looking at. If you must win the bid at the first attempt, we can probably tell you what the numbers are. Then you also have to waive almost all contingencies. So no building inspection, no reservation of financing. And you have to show that you can actually move really, really fast. In those cases, I can pretty much guarantee that we can figure out what to bid. Even then, there are always other people who might do the same thing. So definitely not 100% chance. But if you want to win, knowing how far you can go in combination with those conditions, we can help you secure the house in no time. We advise people to sort of take it easy and accept the fact that it's a loser's game, like up until the point that you win. And this is just how the market works today.
Okay. A different question. If a house is sold in April, when can this bid be found in Walter? So the time between selling a house and when it is visible in Walter.
So the fastest time is probably 4 weeks. And the average will be closer to 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
And this again has to do with either we get the information from the buyers and sellers, or we get the information from the land registry. The land registry is delayed until you actually went to the notary. You will only go to the notary after the funding is secured. The funding takes on average 6 weeks. And then you still have to move in as well. So it's 6 weeks plus the move-in time. And that is probably like 2 to 3 months. And then we need to get the export, and then it shows up in the system. Okay. I wish that we could get it like immediately when the purchase happens. But you have to realize that there are more than a few cases where the bid does fall through and does not end up being finalized. So looking at that information is quite risky. So we expect and we respect that delay. And looking at what's happening in the past 12 months, you can predict, and that is what the model is trying to do as well, predict what is going to happen in today's market.
Okay. I think this is the last question.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. How do you avoid conflict of interest? An example that you are not advising 2 or more clients on bidding on the same property.
Yeah, excellent question. We do get asked this question quite often. It also happens quite often. So we have a rule at Walter where if we advise people while bidding on the same property, we simply pretend that it is not happening. We give people the exact same information. You're also talking to probably the same agent. So the information that we then give you is the exact same information that we've given your competitor. It has never happened up until now that resulted in the exact same bid, not only from a bidding amount, but also from a condition point of view. So it happens. We're quite comfortable with that. We do not get more or less money if somebody pays more or less. So it's very much about we have the same type of people, same customers. We present the exact same information. And from that point on, it's you that makes the final call what the bidding amount will be and what the conditions are that fit your personal situation. That combined results in a bid, and then the bid gets sent to the sellers. So it does happen, and up until now, it has actually never proven to be an issue.
Okay, maybe a great last question. What made you start Walter Living?
Yeah, excellent question. Thanks for asking. I moved to the Netherlands in 2015 from living in New York for more than a few years. I was actually looking to sell my old apartment and purchase a new apartment. In doing so, I worked with an agent called Walter, very friendly fellow, and he sold my old apartment. I've known him for close to 2 decades, so I thought it would be quite funny if I ever do something in real estate, I will use his name. And then a few months later, I hired a buying agent in Amsterdam, city where I live, to purchase my new house. And that was a less than perfect experience. I encountered many of the things that you were encountering in today's market. Not a lot of information, not a lot of transparency, not a lot of guidance. And I pretty much ended up doing all the work myself. And in my case, my wife actually did all the searching and booking and viewings. So when we finally purchased our house, paid way too much money, I thought, why not use like the knowledge that we had from a technology point of view, try to apply that to finding answers to our own questions. And then we'll call that company Walter because he was quite successful. So that's how Walter came to be. Now it's on camera, so that's fine. Now we never have to explain that again. Thanks for the question.
Great. I think this is it. There are no more questions.
Perfect.
Maybe I forgot some, but
if there are more questions, feel free to drop us a note. You can upgrade to a Walter Premium on our marketing website. Go to walterliving.com/pricing and you can enroll into Walter Premium. If you have not enjoyed your 7-day free subscription or trial period, please feel free to sign up for Walter, give it a spin for 7 days, and then upgrade to Walter Plus. If you enjoyed the demo, if you need a little bit more help in securing the winning bid, feel free to book an orientation call with one of our experts. Go to walterliving.com/alles-in-één. or all in one. That's a gamble that you have to take. And then you will see either myself or Marije in an introduction call. We'll spend 15 minutes to better understand your situation, advise you how we can help you win the bidding war. And again, please make use of all the data available And if there is anything missing, if you have any questions, feel free to send us a note, and we'll talk to you in support. From here on, perfect timing, 1 minute past the deadline. So looking forward to seeing you on the other side. Marije, thanks for joining, and hope to talk to most of you very, very soon. Take care.